Methods they use. Cutting, well, you quarry a marble. When you want to split marble, which is in the ground, you get a line of holes, put wood pegs in the holes, pour water on, wood expands, and you can split it into columns. And that's how marble was transported. One of the quarries is 150 kilometres into the middle of the Egyptian desert. So you can imagine the sort of work of getting those columns out. In Port of Rome, they have shipwrecks where they've got these columns of marble in there. You can saw it. You can saw it into tiles. You use a method still used in some places now as a bow saw with iron wire in, sand and water. So you just got your slaves and they just do that, and someone's pouring the sand, someone's pouring the water, and you just wear a groove down through the stone. It's incredibly hard work. I've tried it, but then they had the slaves, so it wasn't a problem. Because the mosaic is consisting of small pieces, you could just send your boys down to the builder's yard, to the sculptor's workshop, get them to collect the stuff they have there. This is the hammer and hardy. Once the stone is down into smaller size, you use this. Now there is an example, a tombstone from Ostia showing 4th century AD, 2 stone workers using these. Some people say that that isn't confirmed evidence that they used it, but really it's the best tool to use for cutting marble. If you go to Italy and train now, this is what you're trained to use. And all you're doing is you have 2 blades. You see there's just like a chisel set into the wood. You have a heavy hammer. This is just under a kilo, and it is a weight of the hammer that does the cutting. And then all you're doing is just trapping the marble between the hammer and what we call the hardy, the chisel piece on the bottom. The blades don't touch, otherwise they will blunt. So all you're doing is sending a fracture through the stone. Now this is like a sandstone one, so it's a bit harder to cut, but you can cut quite regularly down to 5 mil, down to 1 mil as well, whatever size you want it. Because you are just allowing your wrist to flex, you're allowing the weight of the hammer to come down. You're not moving your elbow on your shoulder. You can keep cutting all day with it. And one of the best ways is when you're a block this size, you're sitting cross-legged on the floor, and your thighs actually, your forearms resting on your thigh, so you can't move any of the joints. And I'd say because you're doing that, you can keep cutting all day. The reason I keep bouncing it off of there is just force of habit, because whenever you do any sort of rest, you bring it down and you just rest it on the side, because you don't want to keep the hammer suspended in the air. But you have 3 or 4 lads in one room in the villa with a big pile of marble, and they could just cut it down using that. They did actually find some evidence of a water-powered marble saw that was used, but how common that was, we don't know. So the main thing is that differentiates a Roman mosaic from a modern one is the rules. These rules are in every mosaic. I was first taught them in Ravenna. I say to people, don't believe me, go and have a look at them. Go and have a look at these mosaics, see if you can see these rules in there. Modern mosaic you can't criticise because there are no rules in it. So, when you walk into a room and you have a mosaic in that floor, a mosaic on the floor, they want you to see the whole mosaic. They don't want anything a term to point of focus, anything that draws your eye in, anything that's discordant. You imagine you walk into a room, wonderful Roman mosaic on there, and you've got some scenes from the countryside, you've got a few gladiators in the floor. Top left corner you've got Mickey Mouse. Now obviously that's right out of scope. So every time you walk into that room, once you've seen it, your brain takes your eye straight to Mickey. It can't help but do it every time you go in, and that's what they wanted to avoid in the way that they set the patterns to see everything to flow, because this is just a floor, it's nothing, it's not art, it's just a floor, but they didn't want any point that would keep drawing your eye into it. So you've got a reference guide for the Roman rules in front of you. If you just have a look at this, we one between two of you. Now, way to look at this is go to the top right, size. What you've got to do first, and this will relate to what you're doing today, you've got to make a neat mosaic. So you need pieces, or these are all obviously, these are pre-cut, so you need them roughly the same average size. They're not going to be exactly the same. The rule there, if it is 50% larger or smaller than your working size, don't use it or have a very good reason for it. So these are about 10 mil, so if it's bigger than 15 mil, if it's smaller than 5 mil, have a reason for it. Now, if you're doing an eye, if you're an eye on a person, they're going to be smaller than the 5 mil, some of them. That's a time that you can do it, but you would go back to your normal working size as soon as you can there. If you have something that is 50% larger than your working size, that is very rare. That will give you a point of focus, that will give you something that draws the eye. And so if you've got pieces and for some reason they come off and they're much bigger than that, then you've got to put them to the side or you've got to cut them down. Spacing. Spacing needs to be about 1 to 2 mil. Don't button them up, because otherwise you just create more work for yourself. You can have pieces butted right up next to each other on a straight line, but as soon as you go onto any sort of curve, you've got to keep the same spacing and you're going to have to do a lot of cutting. So you need that spacing. Now, you can go sort of 1, 2, 3 mil apart. You've just got to judge it, so long as it's not too big there. I tend to, on the day course, I tend to term that as the 3 o'clock mistake, because it's usually 3 o'clock in the afternoon and people start thinking, oh my God, I'm never going to finish, and the gaps get bigger and bigger. But these two, size and spacing, make a neat mosaic. Now we go on to the rules. If you look at any mosaic of a figure, animal or human, the background tesserae, you'll see a line of the background tesserae colour all the way round. If you don't see it, it's wrong, it's a mistake. Now there are some times where you see little areas where there isn't a line that you can follow with your eye, but generally you will look at it and you will see. Now the reason for that is, generally your background is horizontal lines. Now when they meet a diagonal, say figure and arms, piece of an arm, you've got to cut a triangle to finish your line. Now, you do another one here, another one here. A line of triangles together visually creates a very sharp line. There. But if you've got part of the figure that is straight up, well, you don't need any triangles. There. So what you'll have on your figure, you will see, if you have enough, where your colour changes, you will have a sharp line here, soft, sharp, soft, sharp, and it will be like that all the way around. So what they did was they had this line all the way around the figure, this border line, which pushes the triangles back out of the way. So when you've got them, you don't notice them so much. So these are all the white tesserae. This is your colour change here. So borderline, have a look at that. You also get it in geometrics, if you can imagine a triangle, a black triangle just on a white background. There should be a line of the white all the way around the triangle, and then the rest is horizontal lines. The black of the triangle should have a line all the way around the inside of black, and then just filled in with horizontal lines, whatever you like. So, borderline, you hear some people will say, oh, it's so the figure stands out. The borderline rule is so the figure doesn't stand out. Number 4, keystone, right in the middle at the top. If you have a line of your square tesserae, one to 2, 3 mil gaps between. On a straight line, that's no problem. As soon as you get onto a curve, if you're following a curve, you get these triangular gaps. Now, if you cut a triangle and put those in there, that would break up that line. So what they did was they used a keystone cut, like you get in your Norman arch there, and then the square, and that takes the curve round. There are some exceptions to it, and you see the option you have of the double guilloche pattern on the blacks on there, that you can use triangles when you've got a very sharp curve. But generally on a curve you'll see that. Now you shouldn't see too many of those, simply because all their tesserae were cut right from the start by hand, therefore they're all slightly irregular. So you just use any, if you've got a slight slope on one tesserae, you use that and try and take the corner around, because the more cutting you do, the longer it takes. So, keystone. Number 5, it's on the left-hand side in the middle, 2 into 1. 2 lines of tesserae of the same colour going into an area where there is only room for one. Both lines decrease, then they go into 1. What you don't want is one line continues at normal size and then the line next to it just gets smaller and smaller and ends in a triangle. They need to flow down into each other. So 1 and 2, size and spacing, you make a neat mosaic. 3, 4 and 5, rules that you must see in. The other 3 now are ones that you put in with you improve with experience, and these are just the add-ons. So if we look at the bottom right, channeling, basically you don't want them all over each other. You don't want to see grout lines, vertical or horizontal. Look at original pieces, and this is generally where it's a problem, is on large areas of background, and you will see areas like this, and it's about 6 or 7 tesserae where they're all directly over the ones below them, and then it starts alternating. It takes that long for your brain to register you're doing it. So if you were doing larger ones, then you wouldn't bother about going back and changing that. You carry on. There. Brick wall, bottom left. Number of the tesserae will have 2 longer edges, which makes them look like a brick shape. Brick shape is, a brick pattern is a very flat one. Visually, there's no depth to it. So what they're doing is every so often they turn them up. It's trying to make something sort of unconsciously irregular. And number 8, line end. Not too much of a problem. When you get, the way to do it is when you're doing a long line, is put your first one in, then put your last one in. Because like I say, it's very monotonous, very boring work, and you switch off. But if you've got the last one in, then your brain just tracks it down. Yeah. Those are the rules, like I say, don't just believe me, go and have a look. Now there are standards of work. You'll see a lot of background. The lines aren't all horizontal, they're all over the place. That's because when you sit down and you're setting a floor, you do horizontal lines to you. But then you've got someone else sitting here. They're doing horizontal lines, but their horizontal lines are vertical to yours. But then you just mash them up in the middle. It's just because the figures would have more likely been done by the mosaicist, and then the rest, the slaves would have come in to do the background. This is where you come in with standard of work as well. If you have a floor where all the lines are, the background lines are horizontal, obviously that's a lot better standard because they've taken a lot more care. If you see a mosaic floor which is nothing but lines of white tesserae, all single lines, none of them blend together, that's the hand of a master. And in some respects that's a lot more, that's a better standard than something like the Alexander technique. Because figural stuff's easy, you've got curves and lines all over the place, you can hide a lot of stuff in there. But when you've just got plain white lines, you can't. You might think it's easy, we just keep running a string line down, but it is actually very difficult. It's like when you draw on a whiteboard, and if you're writing, you suddenly find your writing starting to slope down. It's the same that happens with that. And with irregular size pieces, you'll have lines which might go a little bigger, a little smaller. The line underneath is pushed down. So what you've got to do is you've got to compensate for that line with the smaller pieces, which brings that back up. And then again, the line underneath might start pushing down, or it might get thinner there. So look at the rules, but also keep in mind the standards. The standard work. Borderline, 2 into 1 and keystone are very definite ones that you should be seeing there. Methods of work. Okay, working faster. you've got to think the mosaics that you're doing now are part of a whole floor. Basically what you've got, because of the time, we're very short on time, but I want you to have a go at something reasonable size. You've got the bird, or you've got the guilloche pattern for it. So you need to work at those. If you're doing the border pattern as if you're doing 100 feet, 100 metres of it, all round the room, or if you do, try to keep that in mind. If you're doing the bird, you need to think as if you've got another 10 to do after it. Don't get too complicated, don't get too arty on it. It's just one piece of a floor. Just try to make it something that you can replicate. So, if you're doing the bird one, little bird, which is one in front of you got on the postcard, that is just a template. I wouldn't expect your one to look like that. You need to use that, the tracing for it as a template, and create something which, well, it looks like a bird, but that you can do fairly quickly. There. Any questions so far? Right. Okay. Working on these, what you're going to do is, with the little bird ones, you get pieces like this. You will take a pattern, a bit of carbon paper. There's some paper tape around somewhere. There might be some rolls on the tape. You tape it down, put the carbon paper underneath, check it's the right way around, quickly draw around, and then that will transfer over onto the board. This is tiling board. It's not a cheap lot of asbestos board, as someone asked me. If you're doing the geometric pattern, the double strand guilloche standard pattern there, I'll give you a staff and you will do that pattern without marking it out on the board. You can put the marks on the board, I'll show you how to do that, but you can do it. This goes on to a way that I think that possibly works. If you look at this pattern, okay? Now, this is made up of circles. See there? Just circles. Now, the distance between there and the edge, these strands, they go under, over, under, over. There are 3 strands here. It's a triple strand guilloche. They're going under and over all the time. Now, each strand is 2 lines of black with 3 lines of colour. So triple strand, 3 colour on there. If you take the distance of 5.5 tesserae, so 1 strand width, and then halfway into your single white centre tesserae, you times that distance by 1.5, you will get this horizontal distance between there. Works on all of them. Now, imagine you were doing this pattern all the way around this room. Now, you can draw out your circles at the right distance with your centre tesserae, and then you can work out how your pattern actually falls, and you can etch your pattern or you can paint it all the way around. Or, one way that they could have worked is you use a staff. Just a piece of wood. Now, what I do with this, on this staff, I mark the width, because the size of this pattern is always going to be the same. So that is the width of it. I mark where the centre tesserae are, and then I also mark the distance between them. So you know the width, you put your battening down, it's just 2 long pieces of wood, put your cement into that space between the pieces of wood, and then you use this to mark out on the battening there where these pieces are, where these ones are. So all you've got is marks up on there, and this is from your staff. Now, if you look at the pattern here, if you're following the black line, you know the black line starts there and then goes down to this centrepiece there. So basically you're just doing the same thing all the way, but you're not marking it out. So with the double strand guilloche that you've got there, what you're going to do is you're going to mark out, I've got some staffs here, I'll show you, you'll mark out on the board where the centre of them are, and because this is only one a double strand there, it's pretty easy to work out where the centre is going to be. So you could do one centre tesserae there. This staff is going to tell you where the other line, where the other one should be, and it will be there, and it will be there, and it will be there, and that will mark it all the way along. And that's all you'll need to do, and then you can follow this, and I'll talk you through that, doing it, and you can set it without actually marking the board. So, any questions at that stage?
No, if we're doing the bird, do you do the figure first and then the background?
Yep.
Or?
Yep, do the figure first. If we have a look at the bird ones, if you're thinking of doing the bird, okay, look at it. It's fairly simple. You need to figure out, you see this is later, 4th century copy. Whether the eye is the dark red piece in the centre or the lighter yellow one at the top, really don't know. So you just have to basically figure it out for yourself, what makes sense to you. But look at the lines that they've done. These are full lines. These aren't lines of half-width tesserae. You're not doing a lot of cutting. You look at the green, which is on the breast of the bird, and see how it goes into 2 lines down into 1. You see areas there where they go 1 line down into a triangle. So it's keeping it very simple. The feet are kept very simple. You've got triangles, full-size pieces, a couple of keystones and half pieces in there. So you've got to keep it simple. But you can change the tail, you can change the wing, you change the colouring with it, whatever you want. Because when you draw it out, let's say you draw out those templates, that's just what your guideline there. You can go over the lines. You don't have to stay exactly in those lines because the mosaic that you do is in your head. Okay? This has to be something you create, because people say, oh, will that colour be all right there? I don't know. I don't know what the image is in your head. A lot of time with mosaic work, you are not going to know how it turns out until you've done it. Because this is very simple. You draw a line, you put your adhesive on the line, you put your tesserae, you put your tiles on the adhesive. How good you get is down to how many you do. So you've got to get good quite quickly. You do this little bird, you do the background borderline, and you can see on there that it's sort of the borderline disappears around the feet. You don't try to do a borderline around there, it would involve too much work, and it would be like having a couple of bubbles around his feet. So you lose that, but the thing to remember is the background will take you almost as much time as the bird itself. So you all have 1 hour to do the bird. Keep it simple. If you're not sure how it's going, just look at it and squint your eyes, because that blurs everything. And then that will give you an idea and you'll just see the pattern that's there. Okay. There are a few sets of safety glasses up there, but I've never used them and it's not a problem with stone. Nippers, which is just a 1 pair between 2 of you here. If you're doing the geometric one, hopefully you're not going to need to do a lot of cutting there. So it's like the Hammer and Hardy, these. You do not put the tesserae, the tile, all the way in between the blades. You don't do that there because you don't need it. You are sending a fracture across the marble, you're not cutting it. So you shouldn't need to go more than halfway across. The harder the material, the less the blades you need on. Now, if you put that in between the blades and you do that and you squeeze and nothing happens, stop. Release the pressure and move it further off. Because otherwise you're just putting strain and not having it. And whatever you do, don't use 2 hands. Move the blades off and just allow it to send the fracture across there. The yellow here is the travertine, it's quite a soft one. The terracotta is a very soft one. The dark green is very hard. It's a very hard material, so you shouldn't have more than about 1/4 to 1/3 on there. and there. Don't make sure your fingers aren't in the blades. There. That's the hardest material you'll have. There. If you've got problems, if you need some triangles, let me know and I'll cut you a few off on there. Okay. When you do if you're going to do the double strand guilloche one, like I say, I'll show you how to mark out the centres of it. We've got some staffs here, and then I'll show you the routine with that. Basically, you are going to set the centre tesserae, the single white ones. You have got, with these boards, you've got a 2-colour strand. This is a 3-colour strand on the picture. You're going to be just using 2 colours there. So you have black either side of the strand and then 2 colours. And you can use red and white, green and white. If you were doing 3 colours, you tend to always go light to dark. You tend to always graduate on there. On the 2 colours, you don't have to worry too much about it. One thing I didn't mention with the bird, watch with your colouring. Try to use double lines, like with the green on its breast, you've got 2 lines there going into one. Try not to have too many single lines, like toothpaste with the stripes there. You want to have some blocking colours in there, because otherwise it's very difficult to see which bit is the wing, which bit is the area around the head. Try to make sure you do get some of the colours together. Boards you've got here for the geometrics. This is just a lightweight, it's a compressed foam tiling board. So, remember, you keep it simple, make a neat mosaic first, and then try to put in the rules with it. Your glue, which is on there, you just put a line of glue across your whole line, and then you put the tesserae on there. You put them on, and you press them down, and you leave them alone. If you touch it more than twice, you're fiddling. If you drop a tesserae on the floor, leave it. By the time you've stopped, bent down, found it, picked it up, put it back, you could have set another 5. Just leave it there. Try to work at a methodical speed and know where you're going with it. Know where you're going with your lines.
You look like you're trying to work out where to start. Well, I think that's a little bit little. This is a good idea.
Yeah, and then it'll work.
Okay. Do I have to redo it now?
I'm not sure.
Sorry, I'm just taking a little close up of you, Katie.
Okay.
So you put your
put this one
homework
down.
on.
Yeah, but I feel like I might need to cut it, but I'm not going to bother.
I don't understand.
I need to cut this one.
Now we've got. Oh, I'm doing the guilloche.
That's like a thingy-majiggy one.
Oh, yes, that's how she ought to. Have you tried doing anything with your rule yet, or not? The staff thing, or are you going to do that afterwards?
Anything with the... Oh, no, not
No, you're going to do that, measure it out afterwards, right?
Like I'm barely crawling yet, so.
I'm just...
You just got to sort of figure out where to... Ideally,
That's
you
nice
do...
and neat. Looking good.
Yeah, you see, you can use green instead of the black.
That's a straight line.
That's fine. Yeah. Now, when you do that line down here... Oh,
And patches is looking good. So you've done all your outlines first, and then you're going to fill in the details. Excellent. Oh, it's steaming ahead over here. Quite. Excellent. Hello, Marta. How are you getting on?
Not as well as he.
Can I just say, this is discussing what it takes to have a degree.
Absolutely. The practical. Yeah. Oh yes, I'm working on the same one, I think. Stuff. You've got your own personal slave here, have you, Nick? Who's sort of cutting up your pieces for you. Excellent. This is mine halfway through. Oh.
So that goes there again. So now what you need to do is that black line, take it from there. And down to there.
Looks like a bird. Just. And you've moved yours around, haven't you? You're going freehand. Or you're very good. Yeah, I like it. Right.
People appreciate originality.
How are you finding the gouache?
Yeah, it's alright.
Looking good?
A bit different than everyone else.
Yeah. Right, sorry, baby, in the way. And what about the postgrads table over here? Are we all getting on okay? Good. Hey.
Two boys on one.
Yeah, so sort of, he's got his slave with him.
All women, because they're far better.
There we go.
Feel like one of the exam questions.
Now, something that you've got to understand, now what you have to do is, these are all infill, so they don't matter. They're just...
Just to pester you lot and see how you're doing as well. They're looking good. So you're almost finished with your bird, aren't you? And then you're going to do. You've got to start on the external. Outline. I think is going to be quite tricky. Yes.
Can I have the clipping again? Oh, just need to.
Good. Oh wow, that's looking really good. You've got almost finished. Taking some pictures of almost completed ones.
Oh, then? I just realised we're taking pictures.
Sorry. Oh, you've almost finished yours as well.
Yep.
How are you finding getting the white bits into the holes? Because that's what I've been struggling with.
My hands are
You
too
sort of-
covered in glue.
Yes. I had the table covered in glue as well.
I'm the uncovered in glue guy.
Just the final stages over here. Putting on.
I like the individuality of my one though, even though it's a bit.
So can I ask those who've completed what they've learnt from it? If there's anything particular, it's kind of changed your view of Roman mosaics, or
Yeah, they were great. I'll put on the. I admire them all the more.
how to,
About 10 times more. I was thought it probably like really easy to just be like, oh, I'll just kind of make it as I go along.
I decided we haven't made much progress since AD.
I didn't think about the rules before, like the the spacing and the different sizes. I've never just kind of thought of that, so there's much more thought involved than I really realised.
yes. Yeah, I enjoyed doing the gouache for that, sort of working out kind of the overall shape of the pattern, and then remembering that you've got to get your 2 strands of colours in and things like that, and make sure you've got enough space. What was it like doing the background? Is that quite tricky, or did you sort of?
It's actually trickier than doing the figure, I think. I agree. Yeah, the background took me way longer.
Because I can imagine you've sort of got, if you're following the line, and then it's a question of do you keep going out from that, but then somewhere you're going to kind of clash with the other lines that are going around.
Like I wanted to do lines like that, but it didn't work. It's like once you've got a curved line, you can't really,
I think I was on the instant that tired anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Just like mush.